From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Folklore. I'm your host, James Hernishin. When I started this podcast more than 3 years ago, the idea that the state legislature had declared war on public education was already backed by a mountain of evidence. Although early 21st century North Carolina's national and international reputation was largely based on excellence in education, by 2022 the opposite was true. Teacher pay was near the bottom of national rankings, as was just about every other measure of school performance. Since then, the federal government has joined the battle. One of the first things the 45th and 47th president did upon reclaiming the White House was try to gut the Federal Department of Education. Federal funding makes up more than a tenth of Polk Schools' budget, and it's anyone's guess how long that will last. Meanwhile, our state legislatures turned our school board elections into partisan campaigns, and they've increased the subsidies available to wealthy parents who would rather send their kids to private schools. They call those subsidies vouchers that are available to every family, but because of the staggeringly high cost of private schools, and the fact that the subsidies only cover a portion of the total tuition, the practical effect is that only rich folks can afford to take advantage of them. And plenty of private schools have just increased their tuitions because, well, why wouldn't they? If you want to see the consequences, just take a look down Highway 74, where Rutherford County just had to close 2 of its schools it couldn't afford anymore. Add to that the challenge of implementing a new state law on smartphone use in classrooms and figuring out what the heck to do with artificial intelligence tools that just seem designed to undermine critical thinking, and you have to ask, why on earth would anyone want to be a school superintendent at this particular point in history? Todd Murphy is about to find out whether he's just made a big mistake. He follows Susan McHugh, Bill Obermiller, and Aaron Green, 3 supers who can take credit for turning a mediocre school district into one of the state's best over the last 3 decades. According to the niche rating service, Polk County in 2025 offers the best schools to teach at, the best teachers to learn from, and the second best schools overall in the state. Those kinds of results are now so routine for us that hardly anyone even mentions them anymore. So, big shoes to fill, Mr. Murphy. After starting out as a teacher and a coach, my guest moved into the wonderful world of administration in 2007. He's been with Polk Schools for 12 years, most recently overseeing staffing, before replacing the retiring Aaron Green a few months ago. We recorded this interview the day after Labor Day at his office in Columbus. Todd Murphy, welcome to Folklore.
Well, thank you, James. Thank you for having me.
You've only been on the job for a few months.
Yes, sir.
But more importantly, school's only been in for about 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Right? So it may be a little early for you to weigh in on your experience or how school's going, but let's just take a look at some of the basics that I think listeners will be most interested in. And that is, one of the big changes is that thanks to the state's directives legislatively, kids can no longer use their cell phones during school hours, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, if I'm not incorrect, the legislation that was passed this year basically said, we're not going to tell you exactly how to implement this rule. You got to come up with one that makes sense for your school district.
Yes, sir.
So how is it going, and what is the nature of the rule that you've come up with?
So July 1st, the governor signed into law a cell phone policy regarding cell phones in schools. The state directed each LEA, each school district, to comprise a policy based on the state law. The state law reads that cell phones are not allowed during instructional time. I think one of the things that has come from that law is what exactly is instructional time. And I think that's some of the discussions that each individual school board has had to have internally. Our board has addressed that. We adopted a new policy last month at our last board meeting regarding cell phones in the classroom. And the instructional time for Polk County students is from 8 to 3 throughout the entire course of the school day.
Inclusive of lunch hour.
Yes, sir.
And how was that debate handled? What kind of issues were members of the school board or maybe members of the public What kind of things were they concerned about?
I think from an overarching view, I think cell phones have been a topic of conversation for many years amongst educators, amongst parents, where students are attached to their cell phone almost religiously 24 hours a day. And the amount of screen time that students have in school and outside of school has been a topic for quite some time. We were able to see South Carolina adopt a cell phone policy last year. That went into effect in January 2024. And so they also do not allow cell phones during instructional time. And so we were actually able to commit to some conversations with them to talk to them about that implementation process and how that played out.
Did you go down to Landrum and have a chat?
We had some phone calls. We had some phone calls with Landrum, just trying to get a sense of how it went for them, just to kind of prepare for what to expect. And I think it was important for us to get some of that information. And as in any new implementation of a policy or a state law, there's pros and cons to some of those things. But I think it was important for us to go ahead and try to get this established early in the school year. Uh, what some school districts may be doing and what I know some school districts in South Carolina did, it didn't go into effect until January. And so they were halfway through their school year trying to change their process of what their school day looked like. And I think that was something that we got through our conversations that didn't go well for them, is trying to change midstream. And so we wanted to try to avoid that as much as possible here in Polk County.
So how have teachers and students been reacting?
For the most part, we spent a lot of time with our administrators this summer in preparing, talking about the new law that was signed in July. And then we spent time with each of our school staffs talking about what this would look like within our school system. And so we were very intentional with meeting with each staff at each school site and covering this new policy and what it would look like and how it would impact our school. And so this is a very interesting topic because it looks different depending on where you teach and the level of students that you teach. Obviously, the number of cell phones in an elementary setting is much less than you're going to find in a traditional high school. That's the reality of it. But make no mistake, there are some cell phones at the elementary level. And so we address those issues as they arise. It looks different at an elementary level versus a high school level. So we try to be very intentional with communicating with our staffs, our teachers, about those different types of nuances. And we fully understand that it impacts secondary schools much more than it does at the elementary level.
And the middle schools is in the middle.
They're in the middle. They've always been in the middle. No, our middle school has created an opportunity for our students because they use lockers. And so the middle school is really the one school that we have in our district that takes advantage of using lockers. And so they begin their mornings in their homerooms and they return to their same homeroom for advocate time at the end of the day. And so our middle school students are able to lock their phones up in their lockers and keep it safe within the confines of their locker throughout the school day. And so that, to my knowledge and the feedback that we gotten has worked very well.
Kids aren't trying to sneak them into the
Well,
classroom?
James, as you know, I think we would be foolish not to sit here and say that there are students who are looking to find ways to skirt the rule and hang on to their phones. And of course, we understand that is going to happen. The overarching goal of this is to keep kids focused during class time and focused while they're in the school building throughout the day so they can interact more with their peers. They can obviously be engaged in the classroom. That's the ultimate goal of this, is that engagement within the classroom that we had seen kind of diminish through phones being accessible to students and checking their phone and texting and all the things that happen. So what we are seeing is kids, yes, are still going to try to skirt the rules and get around that. But by and large here in Polk County, we're very fortunate and blessed to have students that choose to do the right things.
So not a huge disruption so far.
So far, obviously we're not completely there yet. I think we're still looking for things to help with the enforcement of this policy. When you think about it in a high school setting, you have over 600 students within a school building, and there are stairwells, there's bathrooms, there's things that at the high school level they don't utilize lockers. It's just not something they've done for many years because of the different classes and things. It doesn't make logistical sense for them to do that. So figuring out a way to help teachers and administrators enforce that policy is still something that we're researching and looking into.
What is the consequences if a student is caught using a phone when they shouldn't?
So we have created a district-wide discipline matrix, if you will. And basically, it aligns our secondary schools. And then we also have a different discipline matrix for our elementary schools because, as we mentioned, it looks different. And so basically, it starts with a warning and taking the phone the first time, and then it increases from there. Ultimately, we don't want students missing class time for cell phones. The purpose is to have them in the classroom. So we're really wanting to partner with parents and families to help with some of these things, but all the way to having a student turn their phone into the office at the beginning of the day and letting us hold that in the office throughout the course of the school day so they don't have access to that. These are things that we want to be very conscious about. But one of our things that we talked about is that we don't want our first actions to be kids going to ISS or out of school suspension for cell phones. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're really trying to be intentional with addressing the issue with the cell phone, but still having those students be in the classroom so they can receive that instruction.
I think that you can anticipate how students are going to react. I mean, it's going to take some time before they're used to the notion of this. We just don't get our cell phones during school day.
Absolutely.
But parents a little bit different. And I just, my own experience, my wife and I wanted to hold off giving our son a smartphone until he was 13. But he started going to Polk Middle down mountain from Saluda, and we felt more comfortable him having one, not just because all his other friends had one, because they didn't all have one, but we liked the idea of being able to stay in touch with him, not during school hours, but at some point. And I think across the country and around the world, where this same series of decisions has been made almost everywhere around the world, there are some parents who say, no, I expect to be able to contact my son in a case of emergencies or my daughter. Have you got any pushback from parents about this?
As to this point, not yet. Now, again, we're only 3 weeks into the school year, and I know at some point this may come up, but we had some of these same type of discussions. We feel like that for our students, because everyone is held to the same standard within the school building, they can adapt to that within the school building. I think one of the things that it's a great point by you is how is it going to impact the parents who have that access to their child all day long? And I can't tell you as a former administrator how many times a student would be on their phone and you would go up to them and say, okay, what's happening? 9 times out of 10, the response you get is, oh, it was my mom. It was my dad. And it would be true. And so there is a level of that I think as time goes on, parents will become more familiar and used to that. But I would imagine it would be an adjustment for some parents.
Is it fair to say the older parents, those of us who were old enough to remember a day before cell phones, we don't take the notion of the need to keep in a contact 24/7 all that seriously because we grew up, you went to school and
Right.
you didn't, if emergency came up, well, you went to the office and you used a phone.
Yeah, the office phones still work. Yeah.
Maybe some very younger parents, a little less comfortable with.
Right, because our society has changed, and that's a great point. I grew up in a time when you know, you would go to camp for a week. And when your parents dropped you off at camp, that was the last contact you had with them till you got back home. That's just the way things were back then. I remember going trick or treating and you would just wave to your parents goodbye and you would take off. And when it got dark, you had to be home. Many things like that. It was just a different time. And I think now how prevalent cell phones are, I do believe some of our younger parents are going to have to adjust a little bit more, given those circumstances.
Well, cell phones aren't the only thing we have to get used to in the way of new technology. The other subject, which I don't think either of us are particularly well qualified to talk about, but we have to anyway, and that's artificial intelligence. And I've got a son who's just starting university, and he's already using AI, probably more than he should. But this is a really unprecedented territory we're treading into. How much thought do you and and the other teachers here, how much do you think about how to manage offloading thinking tasks? Because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is changing at such a rapid pace. Just how far AI has come in just a short period and is evolving every day. It is one of those things just like calculators, just like the internet, the computer. It's the next step in that process. And how do we embrace it, but embrace it in a way that it's being used and utilized in the right way? And I think that's one of the things that is an ongoing discussion in the world of education right now with artificial intelligence. It's something that we know is going to be part of our lives moving forward. I'm not sure anyone can tell us what it's going to look like 10 years from now, 5 years from now. What is that going to look like for us? I saw a statistic the other day that 85% of the jobs that will be available in 2030 do not exist yet. And so I think a lot of that evolves around AI and how our lives could change over the course of the next 5 years. And so it's interesting to think about where we're at and how we prepare our students for AI and being intentional with that. We've been intentional with trying to give our teachers some professional development involving AI and how to use that as a tool to improve teaching, to improve our student experience. As you can imagine, within a classroom of, you know, 16 to 22 kids, you've got kids at different levels of academic ability. You've got kids with different learning styles. And so AI is one of those things you can plug in your standard course of study, and you're looking for activities that are hands-on. You've got visual learners over here. What can I prepare for these students who are more visual, who are more auditory? How do I meet them where they are? And I think when you kind of preface it and put it in that perspective, it is a great tool for teachers to be able to meet kids where they are, using their standard course of study and preparing and building lesson plans, which is a great benefit for our students. But then at the same time, understanding that nothing replaces that teacher-student interaction, and using it as a tool, but not as a crutch, is really our big focus when it comes to AI.
Well, I think most people would love to see a world in which AI is not abused to the point of where no one does any thinking anymore. But it's not easy to create some ground rules. It's much more difficult than cell phones. Cell phones, we're not going to happen.
Correct.
Your teachers are probably using AI again to help them create lesson plans. The students are probably using it to help produce essays.
Hmm.
Do we have to go back to a time where there are no more take-home essays? It's all just put them in the room where they have no laptops, they have no calculators, they have a piece of paper and a pencil, and they have to answer a question.
Yeah. I would hope there's a world where there's a happy medium of some of that. I think when we want to be intentional and make sure that we're getting original work from students, then there may be a level of like, we're going to work on this during class. This is not a take home assignment. This is something you're going to do during the 90-minute block at the high school where you're in the classroom. And um so it's that healthy balance. We are now moving forward and are going to be partnering with Neptune Navigate to help us with some of the AI, and kind of putting up some guardrails and firewalls for our students during the course of a school day. Whereas the teacher can allow students to use AI for certain parts of a project, but some of the things they are not able to access AI for. And so it is that balance of being able to use it as a tool, but not replace the original thought and producing original work, as you mentioned.
So you talked about earlier the need to prepare our students for the future, even though we don't know what those jobs are going to be. We know that AI is going to be part of their future in some way. So obviously, it would be irresponsible not to get them comfortable with the technology. But it is changing so fast.
It is.
I'm glad I don't have your job because I really
A
don't
lot
know
of people
what
say that,
schools,
James. Thank you.
universities are in the same boat.
Yes, yes.
There are kids basically going through the entire courses at university where they don't do any of their own thinking. Yeah,
Right.
teachers or the profs are too overworked to actually pay that much attention to be able to distinguish between the AI and the original material. What this makes me think of is that the schools might be focusing more on those jobs which really are impervious to AI intrusion. When I'm talking about construction, carpentry,
Mhm.
um, agricultural work. Now, I wouldn't want to say that a farmer can't use AI because I almost certainly can when it comes to dealing with understanding weather and climate and just applying other tools to their job. But you're going to still need to understand how to physically work with the real world in those kinds of jobs. And Polk County has traditionally kind of leaned a little bit in favor of preparing students for hands-on jobs rather than abstract jobs, if I could divide it into those two. Uh, is that probably going to be even more so in the future?
I think one thing we want to be very intentional about, and what we have tried to do historically, is to prepare our students for whatever their next step is. And so whatever their desires are, wherever they're leaning, whatever their interests are, that's the direction we want to guide them. And so, as you're mentioning, our CTE program does a wonderful job of those types of things, preparing kids if they want to get out into the world of carpentry, masonry, if they want to get into the world of agriculture. We have the top FFA program in the state of North Carolina. Um, we do a great job with our CTE program here and are looking at ways to even grow that for our students to be more career ready, if you will, when they graduate. And partnering with ICC as well and looking at adding some things to our CTE department. Um, we got students graduating with CNAs. Well, we've got students who are ready to take that next step in their career path. Obviously, there we have students that go on to higher education, and we want to prepare them for that step as well. And so, it's about understanding what the needs of that particular student is and preparing them for that next step, whatever that may be, is ultimately our goal.
It's almost like we have to be less focused on the specific knowledge and skill instruction and more on just equipping them to learn later.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I believe there is we talk about some of the things that will help you moving forward in your journey, whether that be resiliency, perseverance, overcoming obstacles and challenges. Um, you don't find that specifically in curriculum, but it is just life lessons that you want to equip them with and say that it's not always going to be easy. There are going to be challenges in life. You want to overcome those obstacles moving forward to set you on a path where you can be successful. You can be a productive member of the community. We hope and we want our students to be successful in whatever walk, whatever career they choose. And then at the same time, if we can build an infrastructure that supports Polk County and creates jobs within Polk County, that's even better. And so, finding those pathways for our students to come back and be productive members in our own community is ideal.
What about, and I was kind of hoping you might get here, but critical thinking skills, because this is a challenge for me for artificial intelligence. And also the way in which our kids consume information in general. Let's face it, TikTok is not the best place to get your news about the world, but that's where a lot of kids learn about the outside world. I would love if it was up to me, I would be putting a lot of emphasis on teaching our children how to absorb information and think critically instead of just watching the fun stuff.
Yes. Yes. I would agree with that. Social media in general, um, the attention span has changed. You know, teachers see it every day, but we live in a world of TikTok that are 5 to 8 minute videos
If you're
of,
lucky.
if you're lucky, of whatever the crazy thing they're doing is, and they just continue to swipe to the next and swipe to the next and swipe to the next, and so that what that does to you, how you view the world, how you absorb information, how you take in information. Um, and then those are all very real concerns that um, we see on a daily basis, and how you combat that is an ongoing question. I think challenging students to think critically for themselves and make their own decisions is ultimately one of the things that we really try to emphasize. We're fighting an uphill battle when it comes to those types of things.
Is there a required class on media literacy or something similar?
Currently, there's not, but these are topics that I think, because we see the influx of students coming in that have that very short attention span, have that ability to just kind of consume small bits of information at a time. You really want to be intentional with try to challenging them on their thinking process, and that critical thinking piece is very important because if we just take everything that we see for granted and say, okay, well, this has to be true, I saw it on TikTok, then we got a problem, because that's not always the case. And so making sure that they're thinking for themselves and making decisions based on the information that they've gathered, rather than just seeing something and say, well, that's true, I saw it. It's okay to challenge something, even though you do see it. It may or may not be true.
Well, so how are teachers handling that responsibility?
Yeah, it's a daunting task. It is open for discussion within the classroom. I think it's something you just kind of have to weave in to whatever subject that you're teaching. One of the best parts about teaching is that when you are able to have discussions with students and have open dialogue, those are great opportunities for um, adults and students to have those types of conversations about, you know, making sure that you're just not taking everything at face value. Like, it's okay to understand that everything that you see and hear on social media doesn't necessarily make it true. And so, doing that individual research for yourself, finding out the information for yourself, and then making the best decision based on what you've discovered um, is that critical thinking piece that we ultimately want to encourage students to continue down that pathway.
All right. Well, I hope teachers are telling their kids that often.
Well, it is something that, it's hard to um, be a voice when everything that they're consuming tells them otherwise. So it is a very large challenge for our educators.
Okay. Well, educators, I mean, they're historically underpaid and underappreciated sometimes. So let's talk about how we reward them for doing sometimes a job which is near impossible. It has been very difficult for teachers in North Carolina for almost 15 years now to justify working as a teacher, given that they can make more money in other states or in other professions. How is Polk County doing at giving the teachers as much as we can possibly give them?
I think we, and when I say we, education as a whole, um, you know, teachers are not compensated at a level that they deserve. Our teachers work long hours. They give of themselves, their time, to really pour into their students. We are very blessed to be in Polk County that we have great teachers here. We have small class sizes. We have things here that allow us to be very relational with our students and our families. We believe in community schools. We have community schools here. We have generations of families that have gone through the same classrooms, literally sat in the same classrooms. And so that's what sets us apart. We're very happy and proud that we are able to afford those type of opportunities for our families and students. But at the same time, it costs money to create those environments for our students. And it is a thing where I believe it is a more philosophical question. Are teachers paid enough? My answer will always be no. They are not. They deserve so much more. But at this level in Polk County, where we can control our environment and look at the type of working environment we create for our teachers and our employees, is we create those small class sizes. So we try to do something different than, there's not much we can do with a state salary scale. It's set in stone.
Right, but the county can top up your budget, and didn't it just approve $750,000?
Absolutely, it did. Absolutely.
And what's that money going to?
That is headed to our fund balance. Our school carries a fund balance that handles operations, handles payroll. Right now, we don't have a state budget that's been approved. So those types of things go into, in many cases, meeting payroll. We have teachers who are funded completely locally with local money here. When teachers get a raise, we have to increase those raises with some local funds for teachers who are funded by local funds. And so we are very fortunate to live in a place where we get a lot of support financially from our local county government, our board of commissioners, as well as having so many organizations that are willing to provide grants and things and opportunities for teachers. We would love to be able to say that our teachers are the highest paid in the state. They do receive a local supplement based on years of experience in Polk County. That varies. You get more supplement money the longer that you've worked, but they get 2 supplement checks per year, one in the fall and one in the spring, that help supplement their teacher salary, if you will. And there are other districts that pay more local supplement. There are other districts that offer signing bonuses. Coming from my role in HR the last couple of years, going to career fairs and job fairs at local universities, there are school districts that will do a sign-on bonus for hard to fill positions, for math, for EC. It's been my experience that many times those sign-on bonuses are there for a reason, because that school district may have certain challenges. And so we have never been able to afford to do that in Polk County. But what we want to do, and what we feel like we've been really good at historically, is creating an environment where teachers want to be here and they want to stay. It's very hard here, being right on the border of South Carolina, when a beginning teacher in North Carolina makes $42,000 and a beginning teacher in South Carolina makes $52,000. And that's hard to compete with when we're recruiting teachers and trying to get teachers to come here. We've gone to North Greenville University to try to recruit teachers there, and it's very difficult because they can make $10,000 more per year 7 miles from here. So it's hard to put that into context sometimes. But when we do find teachers who want to come to North Carolina, specifically Polk County, when they get here, they find that even though our pay doesn't equal South Carolina, I think the experience that we provide them,
Like smaller class sizes.
smaller class sizes, you're probably familiar with the niche rating system, and it's for 2025, Polk County was rated the #1 school district in the state of North Carolina out of 115 school districts for places for teachers to work. We're very proud of that, and that has very little to do with our local supplement, but everything to do with small class sizes and support and culture and the relationship piece that we are very intentional with. So we're very proud of that. We're also #1 school district in the state of 115 of having the best teachers. So not only is it the best place for teachers to work, but we have the best quality of teacher in the state. And so we're very proud of that. Those are some of the things that we want to advertise to potential teachers as well and say, I know it's not money in the bank account, but what we can offer is an experience, is being part of a family atmosphere, a very relational based school district that we try to take care of each other and support one another. And so um, those are certain things that we point to that maybe money can't buy.
Well, money is still obviously necessary. The last time I checked, Polk County was right in the middle of the pack in the list of counties that have local top-ups of their school budgets in addition to the state funding. So some counties give basically nothing in addition to what their state supplies. Others, like in the center of the state, Wake, Alamance counties, they give like $9,000 per student. I think Polk was between 4 and 5,000. Am I still in the right ballpark?
As far as I know, I think where we're at is, I think our local government does a very good job of supporting us when we need support. If you'll just look around, there are school districts that are struggling financially, and they're having to make some very difficult decisions. There are school districts that are shutting down schools, closing schools. You know, we are very fortunate that we're not in that position currently. And I think the support that we get locally keeps everyone kind of on the same page as to the understanding of how important our school system is to our community, our foundation. We want to be a source of pride for Polk County.
Well, I think a lot of people are still very proud of Polk County schools. One other financial related question.
Yes.
The federal government, I believe federal funding represented about 10% of Polk County schools budget. It's really uncertain whether it's going to be a Department of Education at the federal level for very much longer. What are you doing to anticipate potentially losing more money from the federal government?
I think every year we analyze and look. Right now we're operating without a budget. And that's just kind of par for the course in the world of education. I've heard people talk about a school budget as being an autopsy. So you really can't, you have to look backward to see what you may have to anticipate moving forward. And so for us, looking at some of those funds, we were fortunate that our 21st Century Grant funds, we received those. So we're able to continue our after school program, which our families depend on. We have working families that their children need to be involved with that after school program and get some of those extra academic supports, as well as allowing families to work and earn a living. And so we were very fortunate to get those funds. But each year's different. Without those 21st Century Grant funds, we wouldn't be able to provide an after school service for our community. So those are the types of things that we want to be aware of moving forward, and understand that things are always changing. And so we have to be nimble and be able to adjust, but understanding what those adjustments would have to be made.
But if you do lose the 10% from the federal government, what does that mean for Polk County?
It could mean there are certain positions that we could not fund moving forward. We would do our best to try to create a situation where maybe those positions could be funded differently. But many of the services that we provide, we would have to take a look at and see exactly how that impacts us. Obviously, losing 10% of our funding is going to impact us in a certain way that we would have to make adjustments. But trying to make those adjustments that had the least impact on student outcomes.
Because as I understand it, a lot of that money tends to go to specialty programs, kids who have special needs, for instance, disabilities. You don't want to cut those kids out of the loop.
No. And I think that would just be one of those situations. It's not we're cutting the program. It's how are we funding that program without these funds? That would be more of the discussion.
You might have to ask for yet more money from the county.
Regretfully, that would potentially be something that we would have to have some discussions about, because we would want to continue to serve our students, because that's what our goal is, to serve all our students and meet all their needs. Then we would have to ask for some financial help at that point if those funds were to go away. So, but again, we want to understand that we have to adapt. We have to be prepared to adapt to those changing funds, seeing where we land on all of that. But at the end of the day, we're very fortunate that we have the support that we have locally for our school system.
Well, you picked a very interesting time to become a superintendent of a school board in America. So thanks for stepping up.
Just along those same lines, the fourth day of school, we had a 2.7 magnitude earthquake.
I remember.
As you remember. And so I remember walking down the hall and telling everyone I enjoyed working with them because obviously if you have an earthquake on the fourth day of school, that's a pretty good sign this is probably not for you. So we had a good laugh about that. But it has, James, this is my 12th year. I'm going into my 12th year in Polk County, and this is like no other place I've ever been. This community, this group of people that I am fortunate enough to work alongside in Polk County schools do a tremendous job, and I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. This is a place like no other, and I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
And thanks for doing this episode.
Well, thank you very much.
For once, I can't think of anything to add, except good luck. As always, you can send me feedback and guest suggestions by emailing jamesH@polklore.com. Thank you for listening. I'll leave you with the dulcet tones of an artificially generated voice reading a recent story in Atlantic Magazine about why smartphones in classrooms really are a bad idea, just in case you had any doubt about the wisdom of the ban.
Without phones, when students get stuck, they'll be forced to figure out how to get unstuck on their own. Allowing children the agency to do so has been shown to lead to improved competence, greater overall wellness, and a lower likelihood of cheating. And giving students independence can spur growth even when they make the wrong call, as they are bound to sometimes when they can't contact their parents. Falling and getting back up breeds resilience and can teach kids to not fall down the same way again.